record. Okay, there we go. Let me go back to share now. Okay, hi everybody. So today we have Lisa Saab, who I will introduce for you in a minute. And today's session is about there's a program to use with native speakers. But before we get started, really quickly, I just want to do the norms that we always do. First off, and I will copy this into the chat box also, but if you need certificates, the schedule, well, like I said, this is the last one, but you can go back and watch all the recordings, all the notes. If you just copy and paste this URL, and I'll put it in the chat box, you can get a copy of everything. And then I'll send out the certificates for today and for last week. I'll send out both of them today and tomorrow, because I know a lot of you it's the end of the year and you need to get your certificates ready for your LPDC. Okay, so really quickly, just make sure you're muted to avoid feedback. We are going to be recording this session since it's an informational one. So if you don't want to use your camera, if you don't want to be in the recording, that's fine. We always stay safe and positive, never an issue with world language teachers. If you want, what we'll do is we'll have Lisa present, and as she's presenting, if you want to post questions and comment in the chat box, and then after she does her presentation, if that works for you, Lisa, then she can field the questions, because a lot of times, sometimes you have a question and then she ends up answering it before we get to it. And if you do want to share by speaking during the Q&A part at the end, just type share. We're a small group today, we're about 15, so just type share and you can speak. So I'm going to stop sharing. Let's see here really quickly. Ryan Wirtz, my colleague from ODE, is on. Ryan, you want to jump on really fast? Say hi to everybody.
Hey, everyone. Thank you for coming to this last, but definitely not least, World Language Wednesday. And it's so good to see Lisa Saab. I haven't seen Lisa in years. So thank you, Lisa, for your willingness to present to all of us.
Okay, cool. So thanks, Ryan. So Lisa Saab, I'm going to let her talk about her session, but Lisa is a Spanish teacher at Sylvania Southview near Toledo. So I'm going to hand it off to Lisa. And again, those of you who just joined, we'll keep putting the links in the box, in the chat box. There is the Google Doc if you want to look while Lisa's presenting. And just type questions during the presentation, and then Lisa will do a Q&A at the end. So go ahead, Lisa.
All right, so I am not super familiar with Zoom, but I think I've got it.
You're good. Yep.
So here is, my presentation. So we are going to start off with talking about student conversation practice with native speakers via Talk Abroad. Like Kathy said, my name is Lisa Saab. I'm a teacher and outside of Toledo at Sylvania Southview High School. Like Ryan said, I kind of disappeared for a couple years. So if my name sounds familiar, you've probably seen me at OFLA. I used to present a lot at OFLA and things like that. I had a baby, disappeared, came back, and kind of getting back into the presentation stuff. So I wanted to talk with you, with everyone about this, because I've found this is the first thing that I found that has kind of changed kind of the way that I feel like I'm going to approach teaching or approach like the way that I do things in the future, and that is like just pulling more native speakers into my classroom. So as we start kind of getting a couple people more logged in here and stuff, I just want you guys, if you feel so inspired, in the chat you can tell me, do you invite native speakers to speak with your students typically, and how would you get those native speakers in your classroom? Or if you're like me, up until now, if you don't invite native speakers, why? And there's absolutely no judgment here. Up until, like I said, about 3 weeks ago or so, I didn't really have access to a whole lot of native speakers, so they weren't necessarily something that came into my classroom very often. So I'm going to give you about a minute or two while we're still getting a couple more people in there to put something in the chat, if you feel so inspired. But if you don't want to, if you don't feel like participating, that's okay. We're going to move on in about a minute.
So those of you who just joined in while Lisa might have missed Lisa's message, she just has a question on the screen and you can just answer really quickly in the chat box.
Yeah, it is definitely not always easy to find native speakers. It's really nice if you, like Kim said, to have people in the building that speak Spanish. We're just outside of Toledo in Northwest Ohio, so we don't really have a whole lot of access to native speakers up here in Toledo. Native speakers of Spanish, at least. We have native speakers of a lot of different languages, but Spanish is not really big in our area. So for me, it's very difficult. Oh, that's cool. Dia, that author that did a virtual visit via Zoom, that sounds really, really cool. Yeah, Suzanne, brand new novices, not sure how to use them. I think that this is going to be really interesting for you. Tanya's got international students. I have also had my, usually have two or three like exchange students in a non-COVID year. And usually one or two of them are from a Spanish speaking country. So that's something that I usually pull because they're usually around the age of my students, but not always. So the reason I wanted to ask this is because if you are like me, I've always had some difficulty finding native speakers. And for me, I had always felt a little bit guilty about not including native speakers as much as I wanted to, because I knew that in the World Languages and Cultures standards, that we have a culture's goal of interacting with intercultural competence using knowledge and understanding of native and other cultures. There's no way to actually test if you know that or not, or if you can do that or not without actually doing it. So I always wanted students to be able to interact with speakers, international speakers, or native speakers rather, but just never really had the access to them. And also the ACTFL core practices, one of our core practices is to design oral interpersonal communication tasks. And you can do those within your classroom between students or between teacher and student, or more often now technology and student. But it's not always as natural feeling, and it's not as inspiring every time, because the kids don't have that feeling. I don't know about you guys, but the first time that I used my native language, or my second language rather, with a native speaker, it was like mind blowing to me. I was like, this is not just like some secret code that my teacher is like faking and teaching me. This is actually something that people actually speak. And it was really empowering for me. So I wanted to give that experience to my students, and knowing that my students are pretty diverse and not everyone has the opportunity to travel within our the Spanish speaking cultures. I wanted to give that opportunity, but I never had the access. Some of the issues that I always had was, again, access. I'm not Latina at all. I'm not a Spanish speaker natively. So, and all my contacts that I had when I was in college have pretty much lost contact with those people. So access for me was a big issue. Also, when I would invite native speakers, it was kind of like was mentioned in the chat box, that they didn't necessarily know how to interact with language learners. So their language was never low enough or simplified enough for that students to understand. So like they would come in and speak their native language as they would to other natives, not understanding my students have only had like, a year of the language or so. Safety wise, with our school, we had to have people with background checks. You can't invite someone to come into your classroom without a background check. So that just adds another layer of jumping through hoops of, you've got to go get a background check so that I can have you come in and talk to my school or talk to my students. Scheduling wise, if I'm going to video chat with someone, just scheduling across time zones can be a nightmare sometimes. I set one up one time with someone at 9 o'clock, and it turns out that it was only 8 o'clock in their school or in their country. So they turned up at 9 o'clock in their time, and it was already too late. And just student interest. Like sometimes my students, someone who I find interesting isn't always interesting to my students, or the one person that I have access to isn't necessarily someone that my students really want to talk to. So those were the problems that I had. So my colleague Lucas Hoffman is an ACTFL representative, and he went to ACTFL this past year and found this program called Talk Abroad. I want to be really, really clear. I am not a paid speaker for Talk Abroad. I am not a salesperson. Lucas is not a salesperson. We're not getting any sort of kickback or discount or anything for this. So I just really wanted to share this this resource because I thought it was really easy to use, useful, and something that I plan on using with all of my classes more often next year. Talk Abroad is a website. It's conversation practice native speakers. It does currently offer Spanish, French, German, Italian, Portuguese, Arabic, and Japanese. They are on their they're in the process of also adding Mandarin Chinese. So it will be a feature, the sales rep told me within the next year or so, they should have enough Mandarin speakers who are trained to be able to do this as well. And what it is it's conversation practice with trained, vetted native speakers via video chat who are currently located in their actual countries. So you get to talk to someone who is in the country that you are learning about. So we use the curriculum Entre Culturas from Wayside, and each chapter kind of focuses on a specific country or a specific theme or concept. So when I designed my interactions, I tried to pick people who were from the countries that we were studying. And those people are currently located in their country. So my colleague Betsy also used it today, actually, to talk to some people from Colombia, and they're talking about recycling, and she was able to get people who were able to bring over their actual recycling bins, show them the actual realia that we would not have access to normally, and her students asked them questions and just totally loved it. Conversations through Talk Abroad are 15 or 30 minutes. So you only have those two choices. You can't book like something for I don't know about you guys, but my classes are 42 minutes. So I can't book a 42-minute conversation, but it kind of works out really well because I have some extra time either before or after the conversation to kind of teach a couple things or prepare the kids or debrief afterwards. You can do a whole class conversation, meaning this is what I did was I projected the speaker onto the board, and my students took turns coming up to the camera asking questions, and the native speaker was able to answer to them. Everything is through their own platform, so you don't have to worry about downloading Zoom, you don't have to worry about downloading or being familiar with Google Meet. It's all through their own platform, and it's very basic. It's just basically the video chat, like a big video of them, a smaller video of you so that you can see yourself in the corner, and then there's a very simple chat box, and that's it. There's no bells or whistles or anything. You can't turn the camera on or off or mute your microphone. But the bonus is you don't have a whole bunch of, we have automatic lights in my classroom. The bonus is that you don't have to learn a whole nother piece of technology either. And at the end, what's really cool is you actually get a recording of your conversation. So you get I have a recording that I'm going to play for you guys here in just a second. For high school accounts, they only record the audio. So you don't get the video, but you just get the audio because of privacy concerns. They didn't want to violate any laws, so they just went with the audio. There is a way that you can do video one-on-one chats, and you will get the video recording so that you can access them, but that is through like a university style account. And I think that most people probably are going to be focusing more on the whole class things, at least the high school level. Again, just to emphasize that I'm not paid by Talk Abroad. There's Talk Abroad, and then there's also a company called Boomerang, which is another one as well. I do not know anything about Boomerang other than that it exists and it's a thing. So I'm just going to show you guys how Talk Abroad works. But I know that Boomerang is the same thing, kind of trained, vetted native speakers in their countries. Talk Abroad has been around though since about 2012. And Tim, who's our sales rep that we contact with or keep in contact with, what he told me was that it was actually started by someone who wanted to help support people who are in other countries who might have little or no skills other than their language, and have them be able to earn money or even earn a living just with the language that they know, and be able to participate in this kind of conversations and get paid for it. They pay pretty well, apparently, in the places where they have people. So the conversation partners, these are the 3 conversation partners that I talked to. This is Renato, Marianela, and this is Danilo. They are employed by Talk Abroad. So there are some companies that will allow you to get online and basically just randomly hook up with another person to video chat. And those can be a little bit sketchy. I had my AP students use them one year just to have conversations with native speakers. We did it during class, and some of my kids had some really awkward interactions, some inappropriate conversations sometimes. And so I just had kind of shied away from that. These people are employed by Talk Abroad. They're not just random people who just show up on the internet. Like, they are usually recruited through word of mouth. So one person who works for the company will pass the information on to someone else. And since they're employed by Talk Abroad, they're also trained. They're trained for 2 to 3 months, not just how to work the technology and things like that, but how to actually speak to native speakers and how to speak to non-native speakers, language learners, how to interact culturally with these students, because North American culture can sometimes be different than other cultures as well, what to expect as far as that goes. They are trained to also ask questions back and be able to sort of scaffold their language if they can tell that the person is not understanding. They watch other people have conversations, more experienced people, and then they're able to go out on their own and have their own. Tim told me that they want people who can have good conversations. They want people who can go with a topic or a theme and just kind of run with it. There's a feedback system. So if anyone ever does have a negative experience, there's flagged conversations. You can get them flagged if there was something that was inappropriate that happened. It gets reviewed. The person either gets retrained, or if it's serious enough, they're going to get removed from the platform. But Tim said mostly they're going to weed anyone out within that 2 to 3 month training period that is not there for the right reasons. They are not allowed to exchange any contact information with you. So you cannot get their email address. They will not give their email address. You can't get phone numbers. They won't give you phone numbers. They will not give you any personal contact information. The only way that you can contact them is through the platform, which makes me feel a lot better. Because if I had my students, say, for example, go through and talk to a person individually, potentially, I know that they're not going to end up with someone's weird Instagram handle or something. And they are also not allowed to talk about religion, politics, or sexuality unless it is something that the person has said is religion sometimes, or politics are topics that are common in some upper level classes, or depending on whether you're at a private school or not. So those are the things I feel really confident choosing people through this website, because I know that they have this background and that they have this training, they have this information and these things that they're not allowed to talk about, basically. I have a sample here. This is my sample with Renato, who's the guy down here on the bottom, kind of on the left-hand side. He is an aviation student. So my students loved asking him about why he wanted to become a pilot. I'm going to play just a couple seconds so that you can hear. And these are my Spanish 2 students. So I'm going to scroll here to about 9:30, and I think this will work. So we'll find out. Let me know, Kathy, if you can't hear it, okay?
Did you hit share computer sound before you started sharing?
Computer sound. I didn't even have to click anything, so.
Okay, stop sharing for a second.
Sure.
And then when you go to share again, there's a little box that says share audio from the computer. You have to click that before you start sharing.
Got it, okay. Oh, yep, there we go.
Okay.
Okay, here we go, thanks. So this is my level 2 students.
Hola Avery, mucho gusto. Mi nombre es Renato.
¿Cómo era tu vida de niño?
Es una buena pregunta, Avery. Cuando era niño, mi vida era más tranquila que ahora. Generalmente yo jugaba mucho de mi tiempo, estudiaba, pero no mucho cuando era un niño, y también pasaba tiempo con mi familia o hacíamos actividades diferentes con mi familia. ¿Y tú, cómo era tu vida cuando eras un niño?
So from the moment that I was sweating and nervous when I first started this, because I was like, what if this guy gets on here and this is a complete waste, and he has, the kids have no idea what he's talking about. And it was from that moment on, just so nice. My kids thought that he was speaking so fast. They're like, oh my gosh, he was speaking so fast, but I understood it. And anyone who teaches Spanish can vouch that was really, really nice and slow and easy and comprehensible for the kids. But at the same time, he was using, I didn't tell him what vocabulary to use. I didn't tell him what tenses to use. My kids just prepared random questions. And he was really, really great. Renato was, he's been with the company for like 9 years, he said. So he's been with them and done this a lot of times. So in any case, that was kind of my experience. I had 3 fantastic conversation partners to start out with. Betsy, my colleague today, had 4 conversations scheduled, and she said they all went wonderfully. She had a great time with them as well. So if you're worried about lower level students, like bringing native speakers in, these people know how to interact with lower level students, with the beginners. So it's really a great experience for them to hear, even just with the very basic Spanish that they know, that they can actually communicate with other people, or whatever other language you're teaching. So how does it actually work? You are going to buy credits for your conversations, and then you use those credits to book conversation appointments with native speakers. The cost is fairly low, but big when you start to add up, like over the course of the year. If you want a 15-minute conversation, it's $10. For a 30-minute conversation, it's only $12. So there's just a little bump there. Tim also told me that there is a bulk discount. So if you purchase more than, I think it's 8 credits, you get a discount. So if you're planning, like for me, I want to do it once a quarter with all of my classes every year, or in the next coming year. So we're going to probably just purchase all of those together as a department, or get some donations from some of the parent groups or something in our area. You're going to schedule the date and the time when you're ready, and all you have to do is be 24 hours in advance. So you just have to pick the date, the time, 24 hours in advance, and you are good to go. You schedule for your time. You don't have to worry about time zones. So you won't have the mistake that I had one time on my own, where I just completely flubbed it by scheduling for the wrong time. I wanted to show you guys how what it looks like from my side. So let me open up. Whoops. Just open up this tab here, and I'll open up Talk Abroad here. I'm going to log in, and you do need to talk to, or you can create an account here, but I would suggest that if you're interested in this, that you talk to Tim and have him walk you through creating an account, because there are 2 different kinds. There's a high school account and there's a university account. Talk Abroad typically was used by universities first. So they have a system set up for universities, and they're just now starting to get into high schools, reaching out to high schools and getting high schools involved. So high school accounts basically are very teacher controlled, and university accounts are a little more independent. So you can have your students create their own accounts, and they could go off and have their own conversations. Or just for me, I'm just going to purchase credits as a teacher and just have like a full class conversation. So the dashboard looks like this. It'll tell me how many conversation credits I have. Right now I have 3 30-minute conversation credits, so I can schedule some conversations. And I'm actually going to schedule a conversation because we're going to do one next week for my Spanish 4s. They have presentations that they're doing, but we're also going to probably have some extra time. So I'm going to try to walk you guys through scheduling a conversation today. So what I would do is I would look over here on the left-hand side. When you create your account, you'll say what language you want to learn or what language you're practicing. And I click on schedule conversation. And then I can pick whether I want a 30-minute or a 15-minute conversation. So let's just do a 30-minute because that's what I have credits for. And then here are all of the conversation partners. This is Spanish, so they are they have over 80 Spanish partners, but French also is pretty robust. And then I'm not sure, to be completely honest, for the rest of the languages, how many conversation partners they have. But if I wanted to pick someone, say from, let's pick Guatemala, I can pick Brian. And when I click on his name, I will see his picture. And then I'll scroll in here or zoom in here a little bit so you guys can see him a little bit better. The picture didn't open up, but you can at least see they have his name, his country, his profession, and then everyone writes a bio about themselves. And so it's kind of cool here. You can get a little bit of information about them. What my colleague Lucas did was he actually picked 2 people, and then he had his students do like an interpretive activity reading those bios, and then they had to explain which person they wanted to talk to more and why. And then Lucas scheduled the conversation with the people that they were more interested in. So there is anyone from students to, I can show you the people that I talked to. Let me zoom out a little bit. This was Danilo is right here. So Danilo is in here. It's runs the gamut from college students all the way up through, the other person that I talked to was Mariela, who was Marianela, sorry, who was in her, she's older. She's married, she has kids. And so the kids said that they felt like they were talking to their mom when they talked to her, which was kind of cute. So yeah, there's people from every profession, every walk of life, and they have their like really wide open schedules down here. So you can actually see what times you can schedule her for. She's not available the rest of this week, but you can see all of her times that she schedules. She's available down here to have conversations. The only hiccup that I have seen so far that I've noticed is that, especially because our classes start at my school at 7:30, sometimes there's not a conversation partner available that early. So all I did was down here, there's a little life raft that says, how can we help? You can just click on this, and I just sent them a chat and said, hey, I need a conversation partner. Like I would start a conversation with one of the representatives, or if there was anyone online, or I would just email them. And I emailed them one time and said, I need someone for 7:30 in the morning on this date. And they set up the conversation for me and they scheduled it. And that is how I met Renato. So it's very, very easy to get a conversation. There's always some way that you can probably get it, especially if you start way ahead of time, they'll be able to arrange someone for you. So you pick your conversation partner, and then let's say we're going to schedule with Mariela. We'll do it at 10 a.m. on Thursday next week. And then I'm going to create an assignment. So when I do this reservation, I create an assignment, and this is more for the university side, like university teachers, like OSU uses this for their language program. The teachers will create an assignment, and then the students will just click the assignment and like schedule a partner to do that assignment. But basically what I can do as a teacher is I can say like, we'll call it la comida. We'll call it a food conversation. And then I can put in my instructions that the students and that the partner will see. So both of them will see that information. I can also attach any PDFs. So like Betsy, my colleague, attached a reading that her students had just done about Colombia. And so the conversation partner that she scheduled with had a chance to look over that reading. So she was able to see what kind of like topics they were talking about, vocabulary, grammar and stuff that they were using. And so her conversation partners were basically really prepared to be kind of in line with the reading that they had just done. So I put this up. When we are speaking with the partner, when you have the video chat, these instructions will actually be on the right-hand side of the screen. So if you want to put like the questions that you and your students have come up with in there, or if you want to put the instructions of like just a reminder to ask the person how old they are and what they like to do and where they live and things like that, you can put that there. There is also a space down here for you to write private instructions for the partner where they will be the only ones who see it. So that was where I wrote them and said, hey, just letting you know, these students are very basic, they're low level, they've only studied Spanish for 1.5 years, and it's all been affected by COVID. So I asked them to please just be, be cognizant of that. And so you heard Renato and how he kind of responded to that. And then I hit create, and then my conversation is basically scheduled. I can go back and show you guys how that works. You just click the confirm reservation button and you have a reservation. And then when it's the day to actually have the conversation, you go back to your just main login screen. You'll have the name of the person here, and then it'll say the conversation partner, I'm sorry, the date here, the conversation partner, and then there's a button that'll pop up about 10 minutes before your scheduled time. And you just click it and you click join and you just hang out and wait for them to show up. My kids are always like sweating and nervous at that point too. So it's kind of fun to watch them get a little excited and scared. Past conversations is where I actually have access. I can show you, these are where I can see who my partner was, what date and time I met with them. Student was me because I'm the one who was running the conversation. And then there's a completed button. When I click the completed button, I have access to my recordings. So I can download the audio and I can play it again for my students, or actually have some ideas for the future of how we're going to use those audios. Tim, the sales rep, if you need more detail on that, or if you want to be walked through on that kind of stuff, Tim is super responsive. He's in Dayton actually, and he said he'd be happy to walk anyone through the sign up process, get you set up with an account and things if you're interested. How I used it was like this. I used it in Spanish 2 first, and then I used it with my AP class. So in Spanish 2, I just did it sort of as, let's just do this and let's see how it works. We got some free conversation credits just to try things out, to experiment before we actually purchased anything. I just scheduled a conversation, and then the students read the profile of the person and saw the picture. So I had 3 classes. I had 3 different conversation partners. They saw the picture, we read the profile. We created questions for the person related to the current topics of study, and honestly, anything that they wanted to ask about, because at Spanish 2 level, they're pretty limited as far as like the types of questions that they can ask. And then I just, on the day of the conversation, I just pulled names and random students asked questions, and everyone else was taking notes about what they understood. And then afterwards, I did a reflection assignment, like compare yourself to this person as far as, you know, in 3 different ways. What are 3 different things you understood, and how is that similar to or different from you? So it was a very basic, easy first, second, probably not the best way to use it, but was a great way just to get jump in, try out the platform, try out the technology and see how it goes. I also used it for AP Spanish language and culture. So this was the second time that I used it, and I was a little more prepared this time. I gave them a cultural comparison question because it's part of the AP test. I asked them, ¿Cómo se define una vida feliz? How do you define a happy life? And then I had my students pick the country that they wanted to learn about. We looked at the people, they picked a person. I scheduled the conversation. We prepared some questions together, knowing that they were going to do this cultural comparison afterwards. So I asked them, like, what kinds of questions could you ask someone to find out what their definition of a happy life was? Because I was not going to let them just go, ¿Cómo se define una vida feliz? Like, just ask that one question and be done. So I had them ask like multiple things about, like, is it more important to be rich or to be comfortable? Is it necessary to have a family, in your opinion, to have a happy life? And then we chose which questions we wanted to ask. So we came up with like a list of 15, and we pared it down to 7 because I have a really small class this year. I only have 7 students. So each student had a question. On the day of the conversation, we actually had the conversation. They asked the questions, and after we were done, they did a cultural comparison. So it was kind of like a pre, a during, and a post activity as well. So in the future, our units are all very thematic and country based. So I'm thinking that we are going to probably use this as kind of a precursor to our IPAs at the end of the unit, to talk with someone and get a chance to kind of get that cultural information that we have in our book, but also is just much more valid when you hear it from a real life breathing human being. This is my last kind of thing, suggestions for use. 30 minutes was really long for the lower levels. I felt like I was digging like to get the kids, because a lot of the things were things like, ¿Cuál es tu color favorito? What's your favorite color? And it was just kind of basic, you know, that's like 2 seconds to answer. So what was really cool though was that the conversation partners each asked the question back. So I told my kids, get ready because they might ask the same question to you. And so then they were super excited because they were really nervous to answer the same question that they just asked. 30 minutes felt too long for the lower levels. I would honestly probably do a 15-minute conversation in the future. Upper levels, I felt like I needed more time because the questions were more complex, so the answers were more complex. So I would suggest if you're doing like Spanish 1 or 2, or sorry, levels 1 or 2, that you would use a 15-minute conversation. Upper levels from 3 on up, probably do a 30-minute. definitely prepare your questions ahead of time, but encourage especially the upper level students to adapt in the moment. So my AP students, I told them when after she answers, feel free to ask her more, like ask her a follow-up question about something that she said. So our conversation partner said something about how she went to Brazil, she studied abroad, and it really changed her perspective on a happy life. And so, of course, the follow-up question was, ¿por qué? Why? And that got her to tell a story to us about a moment that she had an interaction that kind of changed her perspective on things. And again, upper level students are going to be able to adapt more than the lower level students. I think that you could save the recordings for future interpretive listenings. Even if you don't have them listen to the entire 30 minutes, you could have them listen to 15 or 10 minutes, or even just 3 or 4, a snippet. And then actually something that I thought too that was kind of cool was someone suggested to me to actually just book myself a conversation with someone and talk to that person about cultural things, because I would be able to dig some more cultural information out that the students might not be ready to ask those types of questions. But again, then I would end up with a 15-minute long recording of a conversation between two people talking about culturally relevant things. And the conversation partners are designed, or they're trained more to have a conversation. So they're trained to ask questions back more so than they are trained to like present. So it feels a little bit weird as a high school teacher to just invite someone to just like talk to your class and just like pepper them with questions. So I'm thinking that maybe next time I might just book one for myself with someone, save that recording, and then maybe play it later for my AP students or my level 2 students if it's on topic there, and then make a interpretive listening task for those kids. Kathy, is it okay if I share Tim's contact info? Okay, this is
Yes.
Tim's contact information. Tim Seitman, he is tim@talkabroad.com. He is so responsive. He is, I think, working from home right now. So he just kind of, you can schedule meetings with him. I have his calendar. I just click a button and schedule a meeting and he is good to go. He's always answered me within like an hour or 2. So if you have any questions at all, if you're interested in this, feel free to contact him. Again, I'm not the salesperson. I'm getting no kickback from this. So feel free. All right, any questions?
Yeah,
Okay.
we actually have quite a few in the chat box here. So I'm just going to start from the first one. And this one's from Patty. And you sort of touched on this a little bit. What ages are the native speakers, and can you choose the age range?
You cannot choose the age range, but you have access to that information. So you can see their pictures. Not everyone included their age in their bios. So you cannot necessarily like limit it to just students who are, 18 to 25 or anything like that. But they are all over 18. And then, like I said, they run the gamut from 18 to Marianela was in her 40s, I believe. Betsy talked to someone who was in her early 50s. But most of the conversation partners are in their 20s or 30s.
Okay. How much did your students converse back? Like you had played the recording with, and he asked him, what did you do when you were young? And you cut it off. So how did that go?
So my kids, I mean, I hate to make excuses, but COVID year has made interpersonal communication very difficult.
Right.
So my twos are not necessarily where I would expect them to be. My kids did great especially because I told them, be ready to answer the same question back. And they all answered it. Some of them, it was hilarious because the person would ask the question back and my student would just be so starstruck, like, oh my gosh, and not understand that they just got asked the exact same question that is on their paper. But that being said, even some of my my better twos, my more skilled twos were like asking and answering more like specific, like one of my boys is totally soccer crazy. So he asked, of course, what's your favorite soccer team? And then they started talking about Barcelona, and he started asking him about who's your favorite player on the Barcelona team. And they started kind of like talking crap to each other about their favorite players. So it was kind of cool. It was very basic, kind of stilted language, but it was an actual genuine conversation. So it was really, really cool.
That's awesome.
My upper level
Okay.
kids especially were totally into it. They totally jumped into it and they loved it.
Okay, cool. Okay, Jennifer wanted to know, what if you experience technical difficulties? Do you get charged for the appointment, or like what happens with that?
So you purchase the credits, and then the credits are kind of like little tokens, and you use those to schedule the conversations. So you pay ahead of time, and I don't think that there would be any issue. I'm sure Tim, if you contacted him and said we had technical issues, can we get our credit back? All he did for us was for our practice stuff. He gave us a code, so he'd probably just send you a code and be like, here you go. But again, I'm not from the company, so technical issues wise, I had zero issues. I've used it 4 times, Betsy's used it 4 times, and Lucas used it twice, and none of us had any technical issues whatsoever. But if there is a technical issue, I'm sure that they would refund it, but I'm not from the company, so not sure.
When you had your kids taking notes, did you have a form that you gave the kids, or how did you set that up?
Yeah, so the form was really simple for mine. I had them at the top write their questions. So they wrote the questions that they had prepared. I had them all prepare questions ahead of time. And then the day of the actual conversation, within their little groups that they sit in, they chose the couple of questions that they wanted to ask. So when they went up, they had a couple of questions that they could ask. I also had them write down, because we had a couple minutes waiting for the person to log in, vocabulary that they expected to hear. So they picked a question, they picked like vocabulary that you expect to hear. So they would write down, like they were asking questions about childhood. So they wrote things like cuando yo era niño and things like that. So it was vocab like pre brainstorming. And then underneath, I actually let them write for Spanish 2. I let them write in English, because their brains sometimes process faster the information to write it down in English. And I didn't want them to worry about missing something because they were trying to figure out how to say it in Spanish. If they understood it, they understood it, and they wrote it down in English, and I just let them do bullet points. And so I had 2 sections. I had one section of things I definitely understood. So things I totally think I understood, that, Renato's favorite food was ceviche, and he used to play video games. And so he named all kinds of like video games like Mario and things like that. The kids were like, they play Mario in Ecuador? I'm like, yeah, they play Mario in Ecuador. Of course they do. And then on the right-hand side was things I think I understood. And we kind of debriefed with those the next day, because some of the kids didn't quite understand, but they were like, he said something about having a dog when he was younger, but then I missed the rest of it. So we went back and listened to the recording to see if we could hear what it was. And we were able to clarify some of those with the kids. And then of course I didn't have a space for things I didn't understand, because they didn't understand it. So.
They didn't know they understood. Anyway, they wouldn't know what they didn't.
But yeah, the kids were really kind of jazzed about how much they could write. So yeah.
Okay. Leah, I'm going to have you jump on, because your question, you said you wanted to share, and it's a little more complex, I think, than if I just read it. So Leah, go ahead and jump on. Just unmute yourself.
Hello, sure. Yeah, wondering how I appreciate the introduction to Talk Abroad. Wondering how we might be able to expand this to neighbors who speak the language. So I'm thinking maybe grandparents of families who we might be able to call, especially in a time where we're all so isolated, who might enjoy a telephone call. And also, yeah, maybe keeping an ear to the ground globally for people who would be willing to serve in conversation partners. It seems like French and Spanish are big ones. And sort of as Ohio adopts more and more world languages, how we might be able to get to share the network. Thanks.
Yeah, so I just changed my language to German. So here are the German partners right now. And like you said, it's kind of limited outside of Spanish and French, because just, by sheer volume. But if you knew someone, actually, Tim, I asked Tim, how do you get people? Like, where do you get people from? Like, is this just a random thing that you, pick people off the street, like, hey, want to make some money kind of thing? But it's not. It's mostly by word of mouth. And actually, Tim fields a lot of people who are interested in becoming Talk Abroad partners. So if you contact him and you say, hey, Tim, I know someone who's really interested in doing this, knowing that they might be booked to converse with someone from another school or someone in another state or even in another country, potentially, because they work in the US and Canada. I think that he would be the one for you to contact. And his contact information, I'll put it back up here, but here's the people from Germany. I'm going to switch over and just see, I'm just curious about like Japanese, what it looks like for Japanese. As far as conversation partners, but yeah, he said that they are open to taking conversation partners, or like taking on new conversation partners and training people. So just have a few from Japan. And then what other languages do we have here? Italian, Portuguese. Let's see what the Arabic looks like.
Be cool if they did ASL too.
ASL would be cool. Just a few. And then some people will do 30-minute conversations. Some people will only do 15-minute conversations, and some people are open to either. So sometimes people will be on one list, but not on the other. But yeah. But definitely, I mean, Spanish, you saw Spanish, there's 85 plus people. There are, for French, a lot as well, from a variety of different countries as well. So
Cool. Okay. Susan just said that she was looking at the website at $7.50 a conversation. Susan, I think you came on after Lisa was talking about the bulk discount, that it was $10 for a 30-minute, no, sorry, $10 for 15, $12 for 30-minute. And Lisa did hers as a group, but so did she. Susan's asking, and Susan, feel free to jump on. Did the district pay, did you say, Lisa, or how did you work this?
Susan, I didn't realize that was you. So we actually started with our just samples, like just for meeting with Tim and having a training session. He gave us, we had 6 credits for free. We could book 6 conversations for free. I probably only needed 1 conversation to be sold. I was in, like 100% in, because it was just so good. The bulk discount is that $7.50 price. So I think $7.50 is somewhere where he said, but he told me yesterday, and I don't know if I'm supposed to share this, but I'm gonna share this anyway. He said that he basically, whatever schools are able to work with, they will work with it. So if your school budget is, you only have $300 and you want to use it for, this many times, and it doesn't quite equal out to $300, they can make it work usually. So unless you're asking for something crazy, like just like all free all year, all the time. But like we just said, hey, can we each have like 1 credit so that we can converse with each of our classes and just try it out? And Tim's like, yeah, here you go. And you just give us the codes. So it was really not, he's been the most amazingly like relaxed, kind of helpful person through this whole process. And it's been really, really good. We're considering next year, we have 5 teachers. We're considering purchasing for each of us 1 credit, 6 credits per quarter per teacher. For us, it works out to be about $1,400 total for us to be able to do that for our school with the discount. And we have an $800 budget for our department. So we're going to spend that much for our department with all of our teachers. And then we also have like a parent club, and we have an academic foundation that we can ask for money from as well. And we're going to try to get the credits through that as well. That way we're not paying $400 potentially out of our own pockets.
Cool. Is he like the Ohio person or something? Is that who everybody would deal with? Do you know?
I'm not sure. Tim has been there since like the inception. And so he is super experienced. He's the one that Lucas met at ACTFL. So he happens to be in Ohio. I'm not sure if he's the Ohio sales rep or the regional sales rep, but he said definitely just hand out his info.
Cool. All right. Jennifer has a question. Did you get the recording immediately?
Yep. I got it within about 10 minutes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I got an email and said that my recording was ready.
And then Rhoda asked about Chinese, and you said that is
Mandarin Chinese. They said not yet, but they are currently training people in Mandarin Chinese, and they're hoping to have it within the year.
cool.
It's an issue with like technology through contact through China and the US and things like that. They're trying to work around those contacts.
Okay. Any other questions? I think I got everybody in the chat.
Yeah, this is like, it's been really nice for me because not being from the community, not necessarily having many contacts within the community anymore, because everyone that I knew, when I didn't study abroad because when I graduated, that was not a requirement. So I didn't study abroad. I did a short little stint in the summer. And so all of my language practice has been mostly here in the United States. I worked at a restaurant and all of the kitchen was from Mexico. So I've lost a lot of those contacts just by the nature of not having been there for about 15 years. So for me, finding conversation partners has been really, really hard. And then when I would bring them in, I was always a little discouraged because my students would get really discouraged really quickly. And then it was 42 minutes of awkwardness because they couldn't understand what was going on. These I love, love, love because they are trained how to interact with people who are learning languages, which we all know is a different language than actually just speaking to your friend.
The sympathetic listener. I like, Lisa, elaborate on I love what you did with the reflection where the kids had to end up doing, I mean, because that's part of the, part of the standards too, is actually reflecting on this experience. Talk about like, what did your kids gather from doing that piece of it?
So because they were asking just random questions, but they were like ones that were personal to them, things about, some of my kids are really into pets and animals and things like that. Some of my kids are more into video games, soccer, whatever. A lot of them got to ask the questions that they wanted to ask. We had plenty of time in the 30-minute conversation with the Spanish 2 level. So they wrote the stuff that they definitely understood, the stuff that they thought that they understood. We kind of debriefed and talked about the stuff that they thought they understood, clarified anything. And then I just had them flip the paper over and I just said, okay, tell me the 3 things, like tell me 3 things in, Spanish 2 level. I gave them some sentence kind of structures on the board or some starters, like ella es, a ella le gusta, and then y a mí me gusta también, blah, blah, blah. Like I like, and she also likes. We are very similar. We are very different, things like that. We just kind of wrote a very basic paragraph for Spanish 2 to kind of wrap that up. And at my upper levels, they did a full-on cultural comparison. So we did the conversation and then I was like, okay, you guys, you have 4 minutes. Prepare your cultural your comparison and go. And they were like, what? So they did it, but they had a really, really good conversation with her about definitions of happy life. And that was kind of the reflection piece for that. You're muted, Kathy.
There we go. The phrase of the year. I even got a coffee cup that says you're on mute. We have about 5 minutes left. Are there any other questions for Lisa? This was fantastic. Again, just one more time, Lisa is not a representative of the company. She's not getting paid. We want to make sure we're very upfront about this. Is just something that she and her colleagues use and they thought it was pretty cool. And I asked if she would do a presentation on it. So. Well, great. So this is our last World Language Wednesday for the school year. We have some stuff planned for June and then next year, et cetera. We got some different things. Now that hopefully everyone will be back to a more traditional type of classroom, we can move forward with more of our typical PD. But Lisa, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Feel free to, the document is in there if you need to click on it and fill out the certificates for the World Language Wednesdays. I'll send those out by Friday because I know a lot of you have to get those in for your LPDC.
Yeah, Tim's info is at the end and my info is at the beginning. You can contact either one of us, but if it's something like company related, like refunds and things like that, I'm going to send you to Tim.
Okay, cool. All right, well, thanks everybody. I'm sure most of you only have like a week or 2 left of school. So after the most stressful upheaval of a year and probably your teaching history, I hope everything's going well and you guys get a break here in the next few weeks. All right, thanks everybody.